So there's a.
You gotta lines it, not line. I went to Walter's Base a couple weeks ago.
They
It's good.
told us when we went in, 45 minutes wait
No.
for food.
I didn't make it.
At least they were honest with us.
Did you tell them who your work was?
No, it didn't. Didn't cross my mind.
The hour being 7 o'clock on Monday, August 30th, 2021, I'd like to call to order the Laconia City Council special meeting for the evening. We are live here in City Hall in the Armand Baldock City Council Chamber. Those not able to be in attendance have an opportunity to join us via Zoom, which is webinar ID 856-6925-9234 with a password 03. Philipman, if you would be so kind as to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Some of that level with some interactive tools. I don't know if it's map overlays from 2010 to 20, or you can drag and drop, but September 30th is the next drop. So what does that mean for us? We need to move our ward lines to adjust it. We know right now the population is too high, definitely in wards 1 and ward 6. It is significantly under in ward 3. And it probably can use some tweaking modifications between 4 and 5. So it's really only ward 2 that looks like we wouldn't be needing to touch that. And again, that's ultimately a council workshop decision. And then, we take it from there. So in looking at the process, if we're not able to complete our census work, which would need to go onto a ballot question for this November election, for the voters to agree to adjust the ward boundaries, there will be a need for us to hold a special election, most likely sometime in January, for the sole purpose of adjusting ward boundaries. I think just based on some of our low turnout on municipal elections, when there haven't been races, we got relatively low turnout. I can imagine the turnout just for one ballot question to adjust ward boundaries would be very small. And we do need to open all 6 wards because it's a citywide vote on that. I looked back to 2012 and data was coming out late again. We did not have this question on our November 2011 local election, but there was a presidential primary that year in January of 2012. So the data was available. We got permission from the state to put this one ballot question on the presidential primary date, and we didn't have to hold a special election. I started reaching out to some of my counterparts in some of the other cities because this is important not only for the local wards, although it doesn't impact our election this fall. Where it does impact is to the redistricting that also is going on right now at the state level. So the legislature has a committee that's ready to start working on it, and they need to know the ward populations. Right now, all of Laconia's representatives are elected citywide, so we don't have anybody specific just to certain wards. If you recall back, I think 10 years ago, there was discussion about it was going to be, one of the seats was going to be Laconia Ward 4 and Belmont was going to be a seat. So therefore, that's a specific reason why we would need to know the Ward 4 population and where it was going to adjust. There are some larger cities where the legislators don't run citywide. They may run in a couple of wards within a larger city like Dover or Manchester or something. So again, having our ward boundaries set so that the legislature can go ahead and do its work in a timely manner is important. And speaking with some of my counterparts, Concord already has language similar to what's here before you tonight in their charter. Dover and Keene are both placing questions extremely similar to our wording here to place on the November ballot to allow city council to set the ward boundaries as opposed to going to a ballot question for the reason same as ours. We're looking to avoid that special election. So the process here would be to if you move the question tonight to a public hearing in 2 weeks, the public has an opportunity to chime in on a parallel path. The language goes down to the state and is reviewed at the AG's office, the Secretary of State's office, and Department of Revenue Administration also review it to make sure it's not in conflict with any state law or not in conflict with other sections of our charter. They will review it and offer comment. If there's no comment, then we're good to go. If there's minor changes, it usually, again, means you're good to go. If it's more of a housekeeping, if it's something significant that they reject and we have to rewrite, then we would need to go back and advertise a public hearing again. So the intent really is to have a question to be able to be on the ballot for November that would authorize the city council After working through a public process to identify ward boundary changes, after holding a duly noticed public hearing where any members of the public can come in and speak to it, to have the council by ordinance amend the ward boundaries. And then if that's approved, that would go into the charter and replace the particular section of the ward boundaries. So tonight you're being asked to move this to a public hearing in 2 weeks, and that's it. If it goes through that whole process and gets on the ballot, ultimately the voters have a chance to say, yes, we agree with this approach, or no, we don't agree with this approach, and the voters will vote it up or down on the ballot. So gives the citizens and our voters, still full control over the process going forward. But we're trying to get this accomplished in a manner that's less costly than holding a special election, and also timely so that the legislative redistricting committee can do its work. So I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can we write this question so it's a one-time only?
I don't think you're allowed to put sunsetting things into your charter.
So can you recall the public ever voting down the boundaries that have been set forth?
I do not know of anything that happened here or in my time in Dover where they did that. It would be an interesting question if, because you're bound by one hand to have as equal representation as you can. And if the voters reject it, is the rejection mean go back and configure the 6 wards a different way? I don't know the answer, but good question, but I'm not aware of any. It would hope we wouldn't be the test case for that.
I just can't see the public voting it down. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a hot bucket, I mean, if a certain neighborhood potentially got moved and they've always been in this ward and that's where they wanted to stay because they voted at this location. I mean, it could.
Yeah.
I think collectively we're a small enough city, and even though 6 of you run from wards, I think you all have more of a global view. I think wards in some cases go back to when we had neighborhood schools and more neighborhood issues, and things just seem to be a little more globally now. But again, the voters would have that opportunity to say, yes, this works for them, or no, they don't want to do it, in which case we'll go through the process and then end up holding a special election.
Which they still have the opportunity, even if we change it right now.
If we propose it, all we're doing is proposing, we're not changing it. All we're
Well,
saying
I mean,
is,
if it does pass,
if we say move this to a public hearing and the state blesses the language, the voters still have the ultimate authority on November 2nd to say, yes, that works for us, or no, we like it the way it is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're not taking any rights away from any voter in the city at this point. You're just potentially posing a question.
Counselor Haynes, go right ahead.
Thank you. Scott, do you see a time frame?
Well, September 30th would be, I
I-
think, when we get it, and then it's a matter of how quickly we can utilize that data. It's council's decision as to how we approach it. 10 years ago, we referred this to the Government Operations Committee and did it in a smaller work session, still fully open public meetings. And you're bound by some simple things. I mean, your adjustments to ward lines need to make sense either from a geographic sense or a neighborhood sense. Your wards shouldn't necessarily look like jigsaw puzzles with juts in this to try to create a district. So here we're bordered by lakes or 106 or different things, and you're supposed to utilize those types of physical boundaries.
The only reason I asked that, I wouldn't like to see it during the holidays.
I would think if the data, I mean, if we won't know for sure. I mean, if the voters approve this in November, then we can work on that time frame, and the city council will work on it. If we didn't get approval there, then my guess is we probably would look to schedule a special election in January.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Lippman.
So I kind of think, see a practical aspect of this, right? Which you put the language on the ballot, like you proposed. But the council works through the redistricting, what it looks like before the vote, effectively accomplishing the same thing. They can vote it up or down, right? I mean, I think the key issue is not to wait till after the election to put out a proposed plan. And if we're getting the data by September 30th, it gives us enough time to put together a plan, and so people can see what's being done, as opposed to kind of this, view of what are they going to do kind of thing.
Sure. And we can accelerate it. And again, that's my hope on the September 30th. We have the data. and we'll start working on it. So again, it's a council-led process with staff, but again, we know the ward populations right now. We know there needs to be a shift from wards 1 and wards 6 to Ward 3. And those, if you look at the boundaries, I mean, 3 is over on the western part and 1 is above it and 6 is to the east of that for the most part. I mean, it's not a perfect world. So that's going to be the shift of population there from 1 and 6 and 1 counterclockwise to 3. And then 4 and 5 also butt each other, and they need a couple of hundred while we're doing it. And that looks to be relatively, easy. It's the 6 to 1 to 3 that I feel like I'm talking about a double play here.
Yeah, I know. I know what you mean.
So yes, we will get on it and work on it as quickly as
I mean, the practical issue is we can't have it before the ballots have to be produced, right? So effectively, we say the council is going to do it. We actually do it in advance of the election so that they can see.
Yeah, and even if we don't get it done before the election, the people still will have a public meeting here to be able to come in and voice their
yeah,
opinions.
they'll be able to see it. And Councilor Lippman brings up a great point. It's not that we just need to have this done by November 2nd. We need to have this done so that our ballots can go to the printer, so we can get them set, get a proof, get them back in time to mail out absentee ballots. So the clerk checked with our printer, and I think it was an October 2nd date that we needed to get our draft, our proposal to the printer so that process can work. So, we're basically 30 days from today. So
Put it together in October. It's not like we're doing a massive redistricting. It's just-
Well, it shouldn't be a problem, but just getting in time for printing, I can see. it
But
being a
we
problem.
can always put them up on charts when you
Right.
come in
Oh, yeah.
to the ward voting area.
yes, we can get as much information out as possible, but I think that September 30th date is the next data drop that we're looking at.
I would-
So, Council, are you satisfied with the information you received tonight and ready to make the move to a motion? Okay. So, Council Felch moves to schedule a public hearing on September 13th, 2021 during the regular council meeting to gather public input prior to any action being taken, and seconded by Councilor Cheney. Is there any further discussion on the motion on the table? Seeing none, all those in favor? Whoops, sorry about that.
I just, in and around the motion, I think we should just kind of lay out what our plan is, right? Which is, have this public hearing, get the information in September, and have something available before the election. That's not part of that's not part of the motion.
Right.
I'm just saying, in and around the write-up of the motion for this evening, just so people understand what's going to happen.
Sure. So, and we anticipate that if there are any adjustments in ward boundaries, that we will have an understanding by October 2nd when the ballot is due. Is that correct?
No,
No.
it would be before, it'd be,
Before
if
the
you go to the
election.
polls as
On November 2nd.
on November 2nd, you'd be able to see what the council had proposed.
Gotcha. Right.
That's our goal.
That's
at
our goal.
least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should be.
If
able
we
to-
have all the information.
Yeah.
We will do our best to get this done expeditiously once we get the data.
Any other clarification or
That's great.
edification? No?
You signed Councilman Hamilton,
Yeah, he's responsible for everything.
everything.
Probably listening in on you again.
No doubt.
Should get a message
get a
any
message.
minute.
All those in favor of the motion that's on the table, please indicate by raising your hand. That's 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Thank you. Like to adjourn the city council meeting of Monday, August 30th, 2021.